Hi guys, I'm Rianne and welcome to this video. I'm going to be making a skirt and like a Renaissance inspired top. I'm starting with my fabric folded into fourths. It's folded so that there are 4 layers. And then I am cutting it so that it is the right length for the skirt. And then the section that I've cut off of the bottom is what will be used to make the top later. Once I have the section that is the correct length for the length of the skirt, I measure out an eighth of my waist measurement because there are 4 layers and you're actually going to cut it kind of diagonally across the middle and then use both chunks. So there's going to be 8 pieces in all. So once I have it measured out so that each spot is an eighth of my waist measurement, I'm going to cut it down the middle, and I have the pins in place to mark that and just cut it all the way down and across. Now that I have it cut down the middle, I am measuring again the length I want the skirt and rounding it out so that it's not long in some places and it'll have at least a mostly even bottom edge. And once I have that, then I can stitch all the pieces together. I also had a wonky edge that I trimmed off. So because of the folds and because the waist spots were cut out on a fold, there's actually 5 pieces. 3 of them are proper full-size pieces and 2 of them are half pieces in comparison to the other 3. So now I'm just going through and stitching those all together. This fabric doesn't necessarily have any specific right side or correct side, so I'm just stitching them together and then making sure that I have all the seams facing the same way so that when I stitch it closed into the final skirt, there's no raw seams on the outside edge. And then I'm also going over the raw edges with a zigzag stitch in order to kind of finish them off, seal them so that they don't fray and come apart while I'm wearing the skirt later. As you're going through and stitching all the pieces together, if you stitch a seam down and one side is a little longer than the other, it's good to go ahead and trim it so you don't have to worry about it later. And then I also should point out that your waist tends to be smaller than your hips or your shoulders, so you have to kind of leave one of the seams a little bit open at the top, like a little section that isn't stitched completely closed. And you just want to finish over that raw edge with a zigzag stitch so that it's not going to fray and come apart, but it's also still open enough that you can put the skirt on and take the skirt off. In order to close the gap so that it will actually stay around your waist, I went ahead and attached a little hook clasp, and I'm not sure why I didn't record that, but I didn't. So I just attached the little hook clasp and finished all the raw edges on the skirt, and then the skirt was pretty much finished, other than the binding that I did put on the bottom. I chose a binding in a similar color. It ended up being a little bit more of a bright coral instead of the same pink, but that's okay, and it came out great. So I just bought the binding at Hobby Lobby, same as I got the fabric, and I ended up needing three packages, three little things of the binding, two full ones, and then a little partial segment of the third. And just stitch it all the way around that bottom edge so that you don't have any raw seams or anything like that that are going to catch on rocks and things while you're walking around, and just give it a really pretty finished look. And now on to making the shirt part. So I measured around my bust in order to figure out how much fabric I needed, like the length of the fabric that I needed to go around my body. And then I made sure to cut a piece that was big enough to go around it and have some wiggle room. And then I also made sure that I had pieces that were long enough to be the sleeves and just cut those out really loose, like little tubes. And then what you saw me do just there was overlap them and kind of just figure out how I wanted the sleeves to sit at an angle, and then just cut it right how it was. And you'll notice that I also did the same thing with the zigzag stitch over the raw edges in order to finish them off on the inside seams. And I'll also do that with this seam here that I've done to attach the sleeves. Once you have all of the pieces, the sleeves and the torso of the shirt put together, you're going to want to use an elastic thread. And to use an elastic thread in the sewing machine, I hand wind the bobbin so that it's not stretched or anything, and then put the bobbin into the spot where the bobbin goes on the sewing machine and let the machine stretch it. Right here, I am using pins to mark where I want the elastic thread to go around so that I'm not just like blindly putting in the elastic thread stitches so that it's not like wonky or anything like that. So I'm using the measuring tape to make sure I put it where I want it. I've measured how far down across my chest it needs to be so that the elastic sits around my rib cage and not around my chest or on my stomach. And then I'm also using the elastic thread around different spots on the sleeves. I wanted it to have a little cinched spot on my biceps and then one down by my wrists. And so I've also used pins to mark that, and I'm just putting that stitch in and taking the pins out as I go. And then once you have that, then the shirt can be pretty much almost finished. I also added the binding around the top edge. In the end, I'm not sure if I actually like the way that came out. It might have came out a little better if I had just used a zigzag stitch over the raw edge multiple times instead, because the binding kind of made it hard for the elastic thread to cinch in that top area, because you're actually going to want to put in a stitch with the elastic thread around that top edge to cinch it in so that it actually fits correctly. I should also point out that when I used the elastic thread around my the section of the shirt that'll sit on my midriff and such. It's not just a singular once over with the thread. I actually did a couple different rows, just continuous rows, or almost like a spiral, right around that bottom edge in order to cinch it in and have a little more than an inch worth of the length of it cinched so that it would sit the way I wanted it to. As I was turning the shirt so that it wasn't inside out anymore, I realized that I had actually put the stitching in for the elastic thread technically the wrong way for all of it. So I should also point out that you're going to want to make sure that you have the shirt already turned the correct way when you're doing the elastic thread. Here it is once I've put it on, and I love the way it came out. I was so happy. You can wear it off the shoulder, pull it up onto the shoulder. I like the way that it sits snug against my arms, and then I made sure the sleeves were a little extra long on purpose anyway. Just adds that little bit of magical feel to it, and it just came out beautifully. I also had just enough leftover fabric to make these little floating sleeves, and I did them in a similar, if not the same style as I did the sleeves on the shirt itself, and I love the way they feel. They're so pretty. And I did these off camera, but it's super simple. Basically just a tube that is bigger than your arm, and then use the elastic thread to cinch it in where you want it to sit. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment or any suggestions you may have, and we'll see you next time.